Hello friends, welcome to our channel Knowledge Amplifier. So today in this particular video, let us try to explore how we can send data to Amazon MSK Topic from AWS Lambda using Python. Okay, so as we know that Kafka is a very powerful tech stack for real-time data processing and many companies widely using that, right? Similarly, serverless services also nowadays becoming very popular. Instead of managing the server by ourselves, let AWS handle the server handling part. We will just write our code or we will just think from the business point of view. Okay, that server management burden let AWS handle. So in that kind of design, serverless services are widely used and they are becoming very popular. And out of them, AWS Lambda is a very frequently used serverless service to run different programs, right? So if we able to integrate our MSK Kafka cluster and AWS Lambda, if we understand how to do that, then that particular pattern we can use to solve lot of real challenges, right? And today in this particular video, let us try to understand how we can set up the integration. Okay, but before that, just to give you some example use cases where Kafka with Lambda you can use. So first example can be maybe some third-party services or vendor company or partner company using their laptop or mobile devices or web browser. Maybe they will hit an API and that request our Lambda will capture. Maybe that is some transaction or whatever information, and that information need to be processed real time. So that time the Lambda can publish that message to that MSK cluster. From the MSK cluster, using consumer, we can process the data in real time, right? So obviously this is one of the major important pattern. Then next pattern can be, you can understand that from SQS to Lambda and then Kafka, because in this particular architecture, API gateway suppose bringing huge volume of traffic and Lambda might not have that much capacity to scale up at that speed. So what we can do, we can put an SQS queue in the middle. That way load balancing will happen, right? So this particular architecture also a very popular pattern in serverless design. That is, the request will be loaded in SQS queue. Lambda in its own speed will consume the messages from SQS queue and will process in batches. Maybe Lambda can publish the messages in Kafka cluster and the consumer can process the messages in real time. Okay. The third very important pattern is change data capture, right? From different database system, like for example, DynamoDB, whenever there is some insert, update, delete happens, using DynamoDB stream, we can capture those and we can trigger Lambda. Lambda can publish in a Kafka cluster. From Kafka cluster, our consumer can read those CDC and they can replicate the same in the destination side. Maybe destination is a data warehousing system, Apache Hoodie table, etc., etc. So for CDC also, in serverless world, this particular pattern can be used, right? So I hope you understood that there are several situations where publishing message from AWS Lambda to Kafka cluster may help us. So that integration will be helpful in complex system design. So let us try to understand how to do that. Okay. So for that, what we need to do, first we need to launch one MSK cluster. So before launching MSK cluster, we need to do some network configuration because MSK cluster will run in different subnets. Okay. For higher availability, at least in two different subnets, two brokers for our MSK cluster should be running. Subnet configuration, VPC configuration, all these things we have already discussed in our previous video. If you want to know that detailed explanations, you can go through the link given in the description box. Okay. So using that same networking, I already launched one MSK cluster which is up and running, because you know that MSK cluster takes some time to spin up. So that's why I launched it earlier before starting the video itself. Okay. So here if you see, this is the MSK cluster. If I just go inside that, here you can see the cluster is active. Okay. Let's go to the properties. Here we are using Apache Kafka 2.8.1. right? In our previous video also we used that. Okay. And then here, if you see that these are the two subnets, one is running in US East 1A, another one is running in US East 1B, right? I can show you that also. So let me just open both the subnets in two windows. So here you see that here this particular subnet, public subnet A is running in US East 1B and public subnet B is running in US East 1A, right? So both are public subnet because IGW is attached to the route tables, and here we are having the security group which is created as default security group for our this VPC, right? So keeping all other properties as it is, what we discussed earlier, like broker, we have chosen Kafka T3 small because just we are doing POC. When you are going to production level, then you can consider higher configuration broker cluster type. Okay, and broker per zone is 1. So we are having 2 subnets or 2 zones we can say, and per zone we are only keeping 1 broker. So total number of brokers in our case will be 2, and these are the endpoints. Okay, right? Broker details we got. And storage here, EBS storage, I kept only 1 GB because just we are doing POC. Cool. The next setting is authorization and authentication, right? So here also I kept it very simple. So as of now, just we are doing POC, so we kept unauthenticated access enabled, and here in the encryption side also I kept plain text enabled. Okay, later eventually when we will understand all these integrations, all this foundation will be clear, then we can add the security aspect using TLS encryption, SALS or SCRM authentication, etc. etc. Okay, we will configure certificates in our upcoming video. So all these things we'll be doing. But as of now, I kept it very simple so that we can understand the basic functionality. Okay, right? Anyway, our MSK cluster, if I just show you that these are basically our client information, that is plain text broker URL. These will not be accessible from anywhere because these are not publicly exposed, because they are running within a VPC, right? And because they are running in VPC, so obviously from normal system you cannot simply connect. Like for example, I can show you. So suppose I can take this particular plain text endpoint, and here in our local system already we installed Kafka, right? So let me just try to create a topic using these 2 bootstrap URLs. So our Kafka is installed in F drive within this particular place, right? And then here, because we are running in Windows, so it is bat file. So for other configuration, how we create topic, so I can maybe copy this kind of code. So first is create topic. So suppose the topic name is demo testing 2. Okay, so here demo testing 2 is the topic name. Bootstrap server here I can keep, and then here our replication factor 1, partitioning 1 as of now we are keeping. So let's just test it out whether we can able to access this cluster or not. So if I just run, here you will see that this will not work. Okay, because the MSK is running in a VPC that is not publicly exposed. So that's why from any system it will not be accessible. So no need to worry that we are doing POC but we are not at all considering any security aspect and it is completely vulnerable. At least it is not exposed publicly. Only thing is, any system which is running within that VPC, for them this MSK cluster will be accessible if security group is configured properly, but not in a public world. Okay, or throughout across internet it will not be accessible at least, right? So no need to think that this security is very less. So you will see that soon it will show timeout, it will throw an error. It will not able to create topic within this particular cluster. So here you see that the code failed, timeout happened. Okay, so I hope you got the point. Now let's try to create a EC2 instance which will act like a client machine, where we will launch the EC2 instance within same VPC, and the security group we will configure such that the EC2 can perfectly talk or communicate with our MSK cluster, and then using that EC2 client machine we will create a topic. Okay, so for that we will execute these codes. So quickly let me create one EC2 instance. So here I'll go to instance, launch instance, EC2 client, for example I'm giving the name Linux machine, and T2 micro is fine, and then key pair, let me just choose one existing key pair, for example this one, and then here I will edit and I will make sure in which VPC our MSK cluster is running. In the same VPC our EC2 will be launched. Okay, so our MSK cluster is running in virtual private cloud, this one, so I have chosen that, and in that VPC we are having 2 subnets. One is public subnet A, one is public subnet B, what we configured. So I am considering public subnet B. Okay, and this we want to publicly access this client machine, so I will assign a public IP. Okay, and this is the security group. Later we need to configure the security group so that the MSK and EC2 can talk. Okay, right, and here keeping all other properties as default, I will launch the instance. Okay, so here it is going to take some time to launch our client machine. Let's wait for that time. So here our EC2 client is running, so I will just copy its public IP And then here, before doing SSH, let me just complete the security configuration. So this is the security group for our EC2. I will go to the security group and I will edit inbound rule. I will add the rule that is all traffic should be allowed from the security group for our MSK cluster. So our MSK cluster security group is basically, we will get from here, and that is this one. Okay, I will copy this one and here I will search that. So this is the one, and here all traffic now we are allowing from MSK cluster to EC2. Now similarly, following that same way, from EC2 to MSK cluster also we need to allow all traffic. So I will just configure that in our cluster security group. So here I will edit the inbound rule, and here I will make sure that all traffic our MSK cluster is allowing whatever is coming from our client machine. Okay, so here our client machine is basically having the security group ID, this one. So I will copy that and I will search that here. This is the one, and then here I will save the root. So both way communication can perfectly happen. I can close this window and now I can go to my EC2 dashboard. I will go to instance running and I will copy the public IP, and here I will open putty now. Okay, I'll paste this one, and here I will take the ppk file what we configured while launching our EC2 cluster. And by default for Linux machine, it is EC2 user is the user ID. It is done. To avoid any timeout issue, I will configure this to 10 seconds. Okay, right? And then here I will first install Java, because we cannot work with Kafka if we don't have Java. So here I will install that one. Okay, next thing is we need to install Kafka, and we need to make sure that that Kafka version only we are installing what our MSK cluster is having. So if you see, our MSK cluster is running with Kafka 2.8.1. So that's why I am installing here 2.8.1. Okay, right? So here I will just do a wget command. It is going to take some time depending on our internet speed. Once that is done, we will unzip that. We will enter in the directory, and then here we will create a topic. Maybe for example, the topic name is demo testing 3. Here we need to provide the bootstrap servers. So for our MSK cluster, the bootstrap server or brokers are basically this one. So I will just copy that, and here partitioning, maybe if required I can make it 2, because there are 2 brokers. So replication factor 2, partition 2 we can implement for fault tolerance purpose also, right? So those things can be done. As of now I am keeping it very simple, replication factor 1 and partitioning 1. So now we will execute this command. So here it is done. Now I will do cd, and that is done. We entered in the directory, and then here we will create the Kafka topic demo testing 3. Okay, so here if you see that this EC2 machine can perfectly communicate with our cluster, although from our local machine when we tried to communicate it was not working. We have seen that, right? And why this EC2 instance is able to communicate? Because they are running in same VPC and the security group is configured like that manner, right? So now what we will do, here is our Kafka topic is created demo testing 3. Suppose we want to start our Kafka console consumer, then we need to enter in this directory, and here we need to provide the bootstrap server. So our bootstrap server are basically this one. I will copy that and paste that here. So what I will do, earlier we have seen the console producer. Now this time we will start the producer using Python. Okay, and for that we need Kafka Python module. So we will just install that. Pip install Kafka Python. Sorry, if it is not working, I think we need to use P3. Okay, so let Python module get installed. It is done, and then here we can launch Python 3. Okay, some part we need to change. For example, the topic name, it should be demo testing 3. Okay, and here we need to provide the broker URLs or bootstrap servers with comma separated values. So in our case, we are having 2 bootstrap server. One is this one. I will copy that, and another one is this one, right? So here I have copied and pasted. Here value serializer, I am keeping a very simple string encoding. Okay, just for demo. And by the time, let me just do one thing. Let me just duplicate this session and start the console consumer, so that when from Python producer we will publish the messages, we can see parallelly that here the messages are getting consumed also, right? So here I will first do cd, and then here I will start my console consumer. Okay, and then here it is started. I can minimize that. Now here we need to start our producer. So we already entered in Python 3. Now what we need to do, we need to first import all these things. All these codes already discussed several times in our previous video. You can check the prerequisite links for detailed explanations. Here we are giving the topic name, and here we are configuring our producer. Okay, right? So here we have done that, and then here we are basically running a for loop, maybe sleep time in between two messages. Let me keep one, and here we are just simply sending a messages. We are not waiting for any acknowledgement from our Kafka cluster, right? That just we are doing kind of fire and forget manner. Just we are sending the messages, but we are not waiting for any response. Okay, right? So let's start it. So see, number 0 got published and number 1. If you see our consumer, here see number 0, number 1, number 2, number 3, like that. In a real time from producer in consumer, the messages are coming. That means we have understood one thing using this particular code, that these can be used as a producer code using which we can publish the message in an MSK cluster topic from Python, right? Now this Python code we need to run in Lambda. That is our task. Okay, so here let me just stop this particular producer, not needed, and maybe I can exit also. Now the next step what we need to do to make the code run in Lambda, we need a Lambda layer, because this particular Kafka Python module will not be available in our Lambda execution environment by default, right? So we need to do that. So already I discussed how to create Lambda layer several times. That prerequisite link also I'll be sharing. So these kind of codes generally work in our Ubuntu system. But here this EC2 client machine what we launched, that is kind of Linux machine. So what I will do, I will create the Lambda deployment layer in my local system using WSL. So I have already configured WSL in my local system. That is basically within Windows we can launch Ubuntu machine, right? And using that we will basically create our Lambda layer. So we cannot create Lambda layer directly from Windows because Lambda run in Linux machine, right? And in Windows, if you just install all the dependency modules, then you might get the platform issue. Some module has different behavior in Windows and Linux machine, right? So for that purpose, we need to make sure we are creating the Lambda layer in Linux machine, right? Now, obviously, you can create the same Lambda layer in this EC2 client machine also, not at all a problem. But because I have already code ready for Ubuntu machine and I have Ubuntu machine installed in my local system in Windows using WSL, so I will just use that. Okay. So here, first I will enter using password, and here it is working. Then the next step what we will do, we will install virtual environment. Okay. So here it is done. Now here we are creating a virtual environment having name Kafka YT. Okay. So here I have done that, and let it get create. Now we will activate that virtual environment. Okay, quickly it will happen. Let's check the Python version. Okay, Python 3.8. Okay, so we will try to create our Lambda environment also in Python 3.8, because it is always better to have Lambda layer and Lambda code in same Python version. Now what we will do, we will basically install pip. Okay, this done. Now we'll upgrade pip. Let it do its job. And now because our Python environment for our Lambda execution we are going to use is Python 3.8, so here I am keeping Python 3.8 in the mkdir code. If you are using Python 3.9, here you have to make sure you are changing the number to 9. Okay, right, depending on your Python runtime execution environment. So now here we will do mkdir. Now here we will enter in the directory, and then here we will install Kafka Python in that place. Okay, so here it is installing. Let it install. Now I will come out till Lambda layer, and here I will install zip, and I will zip that particular layer. Okay, that is done, and the zip file name we are giving as Kafka YT team. Okay, it will be creating in my C directory within users. Even you can check here, just do a pwd. Here you can see where it has created. Okay, so let me now upload this in S3. Okay, so that I can create a Lambda layer using this zip. Okay, so here I can go to S3. and then here maybe for example I can choose this particular one, and here I can upload, add files, right? So here we are in that particular place only. See here, Kafka YT demo. This is the zip file name we have given, right? So that one only I have taken, and I will click on upload. Okay, so it is going to take some time. So it is done, and here we are having our Kafka YT demo just now what we uploaded. I will just click on that. I will take S3 URL. Now I will open AWS Lambda console. Okay. So here we will create Lambda layer, Kafka YT demo Lambda. Okay, and upload file from S3. I will give the S3 URL. Maybe let me give this particular object URL. We need to configure, choosing this, and the environment what we are configuring for Python 3.8, right? So I will create the layer, right? So it is going to take some time, and by that time let me do one thing. So here it is created. I will just duplicate this particular page only, and here I will go to functions and I will create a function. So here lambda to Kafka. Okay, and here Python 3.8 we can choose, right? And then here we will create the function. Okay, so here what I will do, I will put the same code what we ran from EC2 instance, right? So here still our consumer is running, it stuck at number 36. Okay, so I have pasted this code and I will deploy. Okay, now the next thing is we need to add the layer. So I will add the layer, specify ARN. So I will take the layer ARN what just now we created. Okay, I can click on verify, and because our Lambda environment is also 3.8 and our Lambda layer is also created in Python 3.8, so it is fine, and I will add this one. Okay, right? Now that is done. Now what is the next step? The next step I already told you, right? That whenever we want to access that particular MSK cluster, we need to make sure the code we are running in same VPC. So for that, we need to configure the Lambda runtime in a particular VPC. Lambda should not run in normal environment. Okay. So for that first step, what we need to do, we need to give that access. So we will go to permission, we will go to roles, and we will first provide VPC full access to this Lambda. Okay. So here I will attach policy, and Amazon VPC full access I will just try to find out and attach the policy. Okay, right? It is attached. Okay, cool. And next I can close this one. Now what I can do here, if you see in Lambda configuration, there is an option of VPC. So now we need to make sure that the Lambda will run in same VPC where our MSK cluster is. Now our MSK cluster is running in virtual private cloud, which is having the IPv4 CIDRs 10.0.0.0/60, which we configured in our previous video. Now this VPC has two subnets where our MSK is running. Both I will choose. Okay, security group. So here we need to make sure Lambda has the proper security group configuration so that it can talk to MSK. So for this purpose, to keep it very simple, what we will do, we will keep the same security group which is our MSK is having. Okay, so if you see our MSK is having this security group, right? So we will keep this one only for our Lambda. So this is the one which is default one we kept, right? And here it looks good. Now here what we'll do, we'll save this. It is going to take some time to update this. Okay, once it is updated, what we will do, we will run our Lambda code. Obviously, one more thing we need to configure, that we need to increase the timeout little bit because we are running here a for loop. So here maybe, okay, so it cannot be permitted because already it is updating. So once the VPC update is done, we will change the timeout part, and here maybe we can keep 10 messages to publish, print data not needed. Okay, and maybe for example, instead of this kind of JSON, let me pass directly E. Okay, that data itself we are passing. So that way what will happen, that if you see our this was our producer console. I can close this one. Okay, here this is our consumer, right? It is till now has consumed all the JSON data. Now we will see it will start consuming normal number data. because in Lambda here we just now sending simple number, right? So we will do that. So first let it get updated with respect to VPC, then we will deploy this. So here see that VPC configuration is updated. Now we can deploy the Lambda code. Okay. So here Lambda code deployed, and now let's change the timeout also to 4 minutes 3 seconds. Okay. And here we can save this one. And now it's time to test, right? So obviously we can add triggers like I discussed with respect to API gateway or SQS or DynamoDB stream, etc., etc. But just for testing purpose, we will just trigger from here. And here what will happen, that this particular for loop will run 10 times and maybe sleep 1, or instead of that, let me just decrease the sleep interval also, right? And 10 messages should be published in our this particular consumer, which is running in console, right? In our EC2 client machine. So here what we will do, we'll go to test, and here we will click on test. So see here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So here might be some role we are getting runtime handler not found. So that is fine. So obviously here what happened, that in this Lambda code we have not created the Lambda handler code, right? So def Lambda function, that definition obviously if we add, then we would not have got this particular error. So but anyway, I hope you got the point, that now this particular Lambda code able to publish the messages in this particular MSK cluster, right? So from Lambda, whenever needed, we can publish the message to a particular Kafka topic in our MSK, right? So that way all this integration will start working. So I hope you understood this. This is all for this video. I'll be sharing this notepad documentation in the description box so that you can follow this and recreate these steps. Obviously, there are security aspects which we have not considered much in this POC, but in our upcoming videos, we will cover that too. But as of now, just try to play with this Lambda and Kafka integration. Lot of good business use cases you can solve using this. So this is all for this video. If you find this video helpful, then please like, share and comment. Subscribe our channel if you have not subscribed till now. And don't forget to press the bell icon to get notification of our latest videos. Thank you for watching.